Welcome to Womenetics Digital Library, today's imperative for business success.
Everyone who takes up the call to lead and to innovate in particular does so with a certain amount of dream, vision, and I think a preconceived ideas and a total passion for what you do. So I'd like to start actually with Rocio. What were your assumptions upon entering your respective industries, and what would you do differently in your professional life, knowing what you know now?
My assumption basically was at the time that I would be able to sell a product that is highly stigmatized as mental health care, that is intangible. You can really measure that easily, the quality of the product that you're providing, and that is perceived as not needed. You know, most people don't really think that they need mental health care, mental health professional to deal with problems that are, you know, just that everyone has. Most people think that you might want to get a girlfriend, a couple of martinis, and you take care of your problems that way. But selling behavioral health care, selling mental health care is something that I never thought it would be as difficult as it is in a private practice setting. You know, the intangibility of the products that we provide is, you know, just is word of mouth basically for them to know, for people to know the people that I serve, the people that I work with, the justice systems, the judges, the attorneys that refer cases to us, they have to know that the quality of service that we provide is unique, is highly specialized. It has some sort of measurement of quality that you don't really get in products that you can sell as something that is more tangible. You know, that if a chair breaks, you know that you don't want to buy that brand, you want to buy a different brand. So that's part of the difficulty in getting into the business that I got into when I got out of college. And knowing what I know, what I would do different, I would be selling Porsche cars. A product that I believe in.
I actually found this question a challenge because I think when I began my career, I really sort of dived in, and I had a hard time thinking of what my assumptions were at the time, but it's easy for me to think of what I would do differently. And so I was able to sort of back in to what that assumption was at the beginning. I think because I had such a passion for public benefit organizations and for community service, that I assumed that that was a really commonly held value. And so I worked in nonprofits for a number of years before I realized that the public really doesn't have a good sense of the full value that charitable organizations bring beyond our specific missions, like the mission of the CDA to serve and to educate kids. The nonprofit sector, the independent sector, employs 1 out of 20 employees in the state of Georgia. We produce billions of dollars of wages which go into the economy. The nonprofit sector is very valuable to our society and to our whole economy. And what I would do differently is I would be a much bigger cheerleader for the nonprofit sector, not just for my individual organization, and I've served many over the years, but I would be a much bigger proponent of the benefits of the nonprofit sector and the value that they bring in a very broad sense. I wish I had jumped in. And sort of a corollary to that, I think I would have stood up a lot sooner to people who told me that nonprofits needed to be run more like a business. I bought that. I drank that Kool-Aid for a long time. And yet I found now, as I look back, there's a lot of excellence in nonprofits. There's as much excellence in the independent sector as there is in the for-profit business sector. I think it's not about nonprofits being more business-like, but choosing their role models really carefully. There are some businesses I would like to emulate, that I would like to be as good as they are. But there are many businesses that are not run as well as my organization.
There you go.
So it's about excellence. It's not about business. It's about excellence, and it's about passion, and it's about results.
You know, I think assumption-wise, I think I knew what I didn't know, and sometimes when you know what you don't know, it helps you, and I knew I didn't know much. but I knew that I wanted to wake up and sort of work harder than everybody to my right and left, and if I did that, good things might happen. And I tried to get myself in front of a lot of great people that could tell you things. So I think, you know, the biggest thing I encourage is get in front of really, really smart people and surround yourself with those kind of people, people that probably know more than you in the spaces that maybe you're not as strong at. And that helped me. I tried to put, you know, good people sort of around, and that was, you know, productive. But I didn't know a lot, and I think I knew that I didn't know a lot, and those were some of the assumptions that I probably made. And I also think that when you're young, I drove down to Atlanta at 22 from Michigan, and sort of an aspiration of being in the sports business here in Atlanta. And I probably didn't really know what that meant, right? I mean, you pack your car and you drive 75 south, and you don't realize that you might get married in Atlanta, you might raise your children in Atlanta, you might live here, and this may become your new world, and it's been a blessing and it's been awesome. But I think you don't realize that, and sometimes that's good. You know, if you know what you're about to deal with. I mean, we all, our parents probably, we have children, and we'd all hold our breath if our kids got in their car and drove to, you know, LA to start a life, right? But we know what that means. And I didn't, and that was good, right? So what would I do differently? I think I'd probably ask myself why sooner. And everything that we all do every day when we wake up, you know, you sort of have to be able to answer the why question. Why do you do what you do? What are you doing to sort of make your world or the people around you's worlds better? I never really asked myself that question until, you know, my family became more important than my career. And which is the case. And so then you pull back and you say, okay, why do I do what I do, and does that make my world better for my family? And if you can say yes to that, then that's awesome. So I probably would have asked myself why a little bit sooner. I might have started my own company 5 years ago instead of 6 months ago, because that helped clarify my why. You know, what I would have done differently probably is had more clarity, which is hard to do at 25 or 30. But I think the sooner you have clarity in your own life around what you say yes to and what you say no to, the simpler your world becomes. So clarity's been a really good thing for me in the last year or so, because I think, again, the quicker you can learn to say no, then the yeses become a lot more fun. They become a lot more fun. So I learned to say no, and then playing at the park with my girls on a Friday afternoon at 3 was a little bit more fun. So I would just sort of say, those are the things that, you know, the assumptions that I made, and probably the things that I would do differently now, which you don't have enough time to hear, because we'd be here all morning to talk about the things I do differently.
I don't know if you ever realize what you're getting into when you start something like a nonprofit. And when you see something like a cause that would affect so many children, when we started fostering our kids, we had no idea that we would be doing this 20 years down the road, or 30 years down the road for that matter. And but when you see children that are being abused and neglected, I just felt like we needed to do something to help these children have a better outcome in their situations. I mean, our kids are so safe and so loved and so protected, and we'd see all these children that were not, and just thought, how and why does this happen? And I just felt like if we could get the community together and embrace these kids and just wrap their arms around them, we could make a huge difference. But how to do it was a task to figure that out. But I think if I had to do it over again, I probably would jump in front of people's faces a lot faster than I did. Sometimes I think they said, "Oh my gosh, is it her again?" But these kids, they're our future, and what the community has done, and I don't take credit for all of this. You know, I'm sitting in this chair, but I have to tell you that there are hundreds and thousands of people that have done the Foster Care Support Foundation, and it is not a me thing. I tell people it's a we thing. And I think if I had to do it over again, I would become a voice so that the we's could get together and do this sooner. Getting the communities together now to recruit homes for kids is one of the things that we're real proud of, to work directly with the system and maybe make some positive changes that are lasting in the way the system is run and the way the outcome of these kids turn out. It's very hard to say what would you do different, because in different situations you just don't know what they would be. So to do things different, I think I'd get involved a little sooner. I did enjoy taking those kids, but I never took them all at once. Not at once.
She didn't have 45 all at once, let's be clear. But I wanted to start first and just say I'm sitting with a very incredible group of women up here on the stage, and I have a lot of respect and admiration for clearly the different things that we all do and that we've done to positively impact our areas. So thanks for allowing me to sit here with these ladies. But Molly and I kind of followed the same path, and when you said you came down from Michigan, I had to chuckle because I did the same thing from Ohio. But I didn't have a job, and I didn't have any sense at all at 21 about what I wanted to do. I had no expectations, but I have an unending positive outlook on things. And I probably should have a little more caution and pessimism, but I just can't find that in myself. So when I packed my truck and I put my dog in the front seat and I drove down from Columbus, Ohio, and just landed in Norcross, I had no expectations of what I was going to do while I was here, and coincidentally, the way I ended up where I am is that Cox Enterprises built a retail public auction across the street from my apartment complex. And I walked over and I asked them, what are all these lights? What are all these speaker systems? What are all these lanes for? What are you going to do here? Because I live right across the street, and I'm a little worried about what you got going on here. And they looked at me and they said, do you want a job? And I said, sure, why not? I hadn't found a job yet when I moved here to Atlanta. So that was the beginning in 1990 of my career with Cox Enterprises, who's the parent company of Manheim Auctions. And the unending positive approach to things landed me in some hot seats and also provided some opportunities. But I am surrounded by men all the time. And so I think that positive outlook definitely comes in handy when everyone's saying no and you're saying, yeah, it can be done. And I'm going to show you how I think it could be done if you'll just let me go do it. I was involved a lot over my career in startup type stuff, and I think all of y'all have heard of Autotrader.com. That was a startup that originated within the Manheim auction business, and it was a partnership between the newspaper division with Cox and the auctions, looking for a retail classified ad service that could be made available to the public, because our business is closed and really only open to folks that are in the automotive industry. So back in 1998, actually I started on these startups pretty early, mid-90s. When I landed in the current role I have today, it was through a series of hard inner looks at our company. We are a very mature business. We've been on business almost, well, close to 70 years now. And not a lot of people know about what Manheim Auction does unless you're in the business. So because we were a mature business, we really had to look inside and say, how are we going to generate revenue? How are we going to add value to the Cox family who owns us? We're a privately held company. And what are things that we can do that are close enough to our core, but yet new or exciting or opportunities to add value to the business? And we'd always been automotive, and so I said, hey, and I ride a Harley, by the way, but I raised my hand and I said, hey, I think we ought to look at anything that's not a car. What are we doing with every other vehicle that's not a car, and how can we meet a need for the customers that are in these industries to provide them with a wholesale alternative? And over the last 5 or 6 years since I launched this business, it was actually a grassroots, ground-up, innovative approach, I like to think. We've entered industries that didn't have a wholesale remarketing channel as part of their business model. So we brought value to folks that I don't think in 2005 knew they needed it, but they sure need it today. We continue to grow. What would I have done differently? It's really hard to say. I have a zest for life. I have a positive outlook. I believe in the people that are around me. I have a lot of respect, and I put a lot of probably expectations too. If you talk to my team who was here before for the award ceremony, they'd tell you that I have very high expectations. But at the same time, I would never ask them to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself.
So what you've heard so far, and I'm sure you took notes on this, is that you can sometimes start with something that is considered a stigma and turn it into a product that turns into a very valuable service for the entire community. You've also heard that excellence and an excellent performance plus the passion to deliver that is what it's all about. You've heard that it's not a me thing, it's a we thing, and I think that goes in business as well as certainly in community and how that really resonates. You've heard it also to say that it's important to know what you do not know, and sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you get with really smart people who are at least kind enough not to tell you that you might be the dumbest thing they've ever seen coming down the road, but they might show you and illuminate the way so that you can turn around and illuminate the way. And always ask the why. Why am I doing this? What's the purpose? And also that positive outlook is helpful, especially if you work with an abundance of the non-women factor in the world.
We love the men. We do love the men.
That is very helpful because sometimes the first answer might be no, that's not a good idea. So you have to press forward and have that inner sense of yourself. So we've gotten some great advice here already.